4, 3, 2, 1.
There's another world that awaits, far beyond what we can see and feel. A place that's anything but ordinary. Somewhere between abnormal and paranormal.
What you believe might not be. Step into the zone of the vast unknown. UFOs, aliens, ghosts, Bigfoot, conspiracies and cover-ups. Into the Parabnormal we go with Jeremy Scott.
These are my kind of nights to do this program when we have our finger on the pulse of what is going on out there. Of course, we always try to have our finger on the pulse, but tonight is no exception to that. Of course, if you've been paying attention in the past few days or so, you've heard about the cattle mutilations in Texas. And then we started hearing about more cattle mutilations in Texas, and likely happening in other places as well. This certainly has brought more mainstream coverage to a topic that is often considered too taboo for, serious consideration. It's one of those things that people dismiss, they poo-poo, whatever the case happens to be, but it continues to happen. Cattle gutted without blood, and it happens in the most shocking of ways. In fact, we're going to bring in George Henry just a bit early here in this first hour to bring us this report with the latest, not necessarily the greatest, of what's going on in Texas. George?
Cattle mutilations in Texas have drawn attention from police. Madison County Sheriff's Office says the deaths of 6 cows is unknown, while another is said to be from pneumonia, although there are still unanswered questions about the finding. Last week, a rancher found one of their cows dead with its tongue removed and cuts around the mouth described as being done with apparent precision. There was no blood at the scene, signs of a struggle, or any scavengers, and no tracks were nearby. But that's only the start of this mystery. 5 more cattle mutilations in 2 other counties were reported that were, quote, unnervingly similar and with their organs removed. A 7th case was reported yesterday. The sheriff's office refers to multiple similar incidents across the United States and says they're actively working to find answers. For Paranormal News, I'm George Henry. Jeremy?
Isn't that interesting? The sheriff's office in Madison County making a public statement on their Facebook page about the deaths of these cattle. The numbers, though, are far greater as far as the number of cattle that have, met this same fate over the years, over the decades. In fact, what struck out to me from that report is that they talk about multiple similar incidents that have been reported across the United States, and that they are actively coordinating with other agencies to find answers. Oh boy, when you talk about coordinating with other agencies, that's when my hackles get up, because it just becomes a bureaucratic mess. But no, I know that the sheriff's office is absolutely overwhelmed with the situation, and reaching out to investigators such as Christopher O'Brien, who joins us now. He is author of Stalking the Herd, Unraveling the Cattle Mutilation Mystery. He's investigated hundreds of unexplained events in Colorado and New Mexico in the late 90s and early 2000. His log of UFOs, cattle mutilations, and crypto creatures is one of the largest databases of unusual occurrences in the USA. His book, Stalking the Herd, addresses the perplexing cattle mutilation mystery. He is currently marketing UFO surveillance gear and software monitoring equipment with the UFO Data Acquisition Project that is already up in 43 locations and 9 countries. It'll be very interesting to talk with him and actually see over time what that happens to capture. Maybe it will capture one of these cattle mutilations, or maybe UFO sightings followed by cattle mutilations, or I don't know, maybe Bigfoot's involved. I don't know. But Christopher, welcome back to the program. I was looking back in our archives, and it was June of 2017 that you were here last. So it is great to have you back. What do we know about these cases, particularly the batch in Texas?
Well, I can say is they're back. When you have a number, of counties, in this case 3, all reporting incidents almost simultaneously with the same apparent wounds that were found on all the animals. That to me means that, that there's something going on with intelligence, something with an agenda, and something that's highly skilled and well equipped to pull these types of clandestine operations off. This is classic mutilation time, and we haven't really had that since 2019, when we had the cases that were reported from Central Oregon. 5 bulls in one night were 5 seed bulls. I mean, we're talking that's $250,000 maybe lost by the rancher. So these latest cases from Madison and Bravos, and I forget the other county, are a little disturbing, because we haven't seen, Texas has not seen mutilations for quite some time officially. Again, now I like to preface all this information with what I have always thought was a highly underreported mystery. As many as 9 out of 10 of these cases may go unreported, and if that's the case, then we've got a lot of ranchers and farmers getting hit financially, having their peace of mind and their sense of safety and security is being shattered and threatened. And at some point, we're going to have to solve who and what is behind these horrific deaths, which now number upwards of 10,000 that we know of, have some form of documentation.
Well, and perhaps underreported because they may not, and by they I mean the farmers and the ranchers, may not put 2 and 2 together, may not realize that, well, first they may not know how long the animal's been there, and they may not, understand fully, and this is, no disrespect to them, what it is that they're dealing with. Or maybe they feel like they might be ridiculed if they report it, maybe a combination of both.
Yeah, it's a combination of all those things. I think the main thing is that they've already lost their investment. The cow's dead. There's nothing they're going to be able to do about. They're not going to be able to bring it back from their dead. Cows don't respond like Lazarus in the cave. And that being the case, they are quite aware that these things have been going on for decades and that nobody's been caught. So it's almost a case of just drag it off to a bone pile, bury it, take it out to the back 40 or whatever, get rid of it, just out of sight, out of mind. Don't stigmatize your family by going to the media or making an official law enforcement report. Don't bring undue attention for the wrong reasons to your operation. There's a lot of reasons why a rancher would choose to hide the fact that one of these cattle cases have occurred, or even multiple cattle cases have occurred, mutilations on his ranch. I've had ranchers hide them from their own families, as not to scare the wife and scare his kids and his neighbors. So I think there's a real rationale for nothing's going to come from going public with it, and
nothing good, at least.
If you have military helicopters sighted, occasionally those reports are filed, because then the farmer thinks he's being victimized by his government, and in some some parts of the country, that's not a good thing. And chances are, if he's angry enough, he'll go to the local paper, or he'll go to his local politicians or his, to law enforcement, because he knows darn right there, no little aliens came down and did that to my Bessie. Freaking hell, it was our helicopter over my pasture. Kind of hard not to make the connection.
Has that been the case in some of these where there's been something overhead?
Hundreds.
Interesting.
A lot of investigators that you talk to, they don't like to talk about that. They like to come up with theories that explains how this is all aliens and how it's all ET and all this. That's a least likely explanation to try to explain what's going on here. The least likely. That's the one that I would least suspect as being the answer. And not that I'm anybody to write the Bible on it, but yeah, I did write the Bible on it. I've spent 25 years, 30 years on this, in the field, slogging around in the mud, smelling dead cadaverine molecules, and not being allowed back in my house when I got home. It's a very serious undertaking, and I've worked with quite a number of law enforcement, with veterinary pathologists, with veterinary colleges, with state crime labs, with brand inspectors. The list goes down, is long, and I can tell you from an informed point of view that the majority of these cases are done by two-legged varmints with instrumentation and with skill and with an agenda and a lot of talent. There's no two ways of getting around that.
Yeah, you have to have a skill in order.
Misidentified, to be honest.
What is misidentified?
When the media gets involved, like right now, and then all of a sudden cases start popping up all over. These are the cases that are generally misidentified scavenger action, which again, other investigators don't like to talk about. But out of the 200 cases I went out on, 40 without question, just without any shadow of a doubt in my mind and in the mind of the investigators that I was working with, 40 of those were definitely high strange and done with intelligence, with skill. And out of those, there was somewhere south of 10 were high strange and could not be explained with normal forensic science or investigative techniques. That's out of 200 cases now. Mm-hmm. So once the media gets involved, every dead cow in a pasture to somebody who doesn't know what they're looking at is a potential mutilation. I hate to tell you. I mean, I've even been fooled. And I'm pretty knowledgeable about this subject, unfortunately.
Well, let's get into that.
The ancient mariner had a dead albatross around his neck. I've got a dead cow around mine. It's heavy, too.
I love that. We'll be back with Christopher O'Brien talking about these cattle mutilations and perhaps how one can be fooled in what it is that they're looking at. We'll also talk about the precision and what type of instrumentation and skill that it would actually take in order to do something like this. More on our program coming up right after this. Stick with us.
Into the Paranormal.
When there's one and then there's another, it's kind of hard to keep up. Are they all legitimate or high strangeness cattle mutilations, or are they just misidentified? My guest is Christopher O'Brien. So talk about some of the common ways that people misidentify these things.
Well, a real mutilation is being done with a sharp implement. Everybody says these are done with lasers. They're not done with lasers. I've only had 2 out of 200 cases that had indication of high heat being the cutting agent. Most of the time, the vast majority of the time, the highest percentage number of cases are done with sharp implements. Sharp implements cut hair. Nothing in nature can cut hair in a straight line. So the first thing I do when I go out is I look for cut hair follicles. That is your giveaway. That is your litmus test. If you can find cut hair follicles, you have a real mutilation. When a coyote or a pack of wild dogs or a mountain lion or a fox, when they attack an animal, they're tearing the flesh between the hair. The hair is not being, maybe right where the tooth is clamped on, excuse me, to the neck. You're going to have some damage to the hair. But you're not going to have a straight line of cut hair follicles. So that's my main litmus test. Excuse me.
Gotcha.
As far as whether these recent cases are noteworthy and potentially eye strange, because they happen simultaneously, because they had virtually the same exact operations done on them, and because they all occurred in an area that has not had any mutilations for quite some time, to my knowledge, then I think it's pretty likely that this first batch of cases is real. It's the cases that occur now that are that need to be inspected very carefully before pronouncements are made of something nefarious going on with that particular animal. This is right at the time now where everybody's a little spooked and nervous, and I've fallen prey to it myself early on when I was first getting involved in doing actual field investigations. I didn't have the knowledge base and the experience that I have now to be able to put together rules of thumb and standard operating procedure when I go to a crime site. And so I've been fooled. I'll be the first to admit it. However, I made sure I got myself up to speed real fast when these cases continued to happen, day after day, week after week, month after month. It didn't look like it was going to stop anytime soon. Nobody was bothering to go around and with due diligence, try to figure out what was going on, or at least ascertain the extent of what we were dealing with. So, anybody there in the Houston area, if you'd like to contact me, it would be great to dovetail my knowledge and efforts with anyone on the ground there. I have talked with one of the investigators from Madison County, who Carly Foster, who's been assigned, I think, at least the cases in her county, and I know she's going to be working with the other counties closely as well.
Yeah. We'll continue with Christopher O'Brien. We're at the bottom of the hour. We'll have more of our conversation on Into the Parabnormal right after this. Don't go anywhere. I'm Jeremy Scott.
Found dead, and the manner of their deaths are a real mystery.
Thousands of cows mutilated in New Mexico and other states.
Strangely, farmers all over the world are reporting similar mutilations.
The offenders barely took any meat.
I don't understand why you do that much work for that little bit of meat.
I looked at first to see her tongue was gone, then immediately noticed the udder had completely been removed.
First, I thought it just died naturally. and then I got closer to it, and I could see it wasn't natural.
14,000 cattle mutilations that happened.
Particularly prevalent around Colorado, New Mexico, Arizona, and Utah.
Federal agents got involved in the case at the urging of a U.S. senator from New Mexico more than 30 years ago.
Into the Parabnormal with Jeremy Scott. Somewhere between abnormal and paranormal.
I mean, I get it. It's not within one's purview. Certainly dealing with cattle mutilations unless you choose to specialize in it, which is something that Christopher O'Brien, author of Stalking the Herd, has dedicated his life to in trying to get to the bottom of this mystery. And so tell us, please, about working with the investigators and what it's been like educating them on this process.
Well, they're very open. They're open for any help they can get, and they do have a degree of respect for the amount of work that I've done, and for the number of agencies that I've worked with. I've actually consulted for sheriff's departments, Georgia, Florida, New Mexico, all over southern Colorado, northern New Mexico. And the list goes on and on, Kansas, Nebraska. But one thing that I did notice in the run-up here, I heard somebody say that lots of mutilations happen in Arizona now. It's one of the reasons why I moved there and lived there for 14 years, because they've only had 12 cases. And coincidentally, they were right before the Travis Walton event occurred. Right in the same area too, I might add. Which go figure. But yeah, I think I do get calls from law enforcement simply because they just do a Google search and my name kind of dominates that particular search term for ill or for nil. I pretty much consider myself retired from field investigating. It would take me a lot to get me back out into the field. I'll help sitting at my desk as much as people need help, but I'm just not. My days of dead cows.
Once you've
field,
seen one or 10 or 100, you've seen it all, I guess.
Well, it's just not something that it's the most distasteful thing that I've ever done in my life is investigate a dead, rotting cow. There's nothing worse. Now, if I was a homicide detective of some big city homicide department, I wouldn't be saying that, but I'm not. I try to stay away from things that are dead, and I have not chosen this as some sort of lifelong job, or I'm not a crusader. I'm just out attempting to help, really worried ranchers and their families, and help the local officials that are trying to help the families and help them as well. I don't work for the government. I've never worked for the government. They wouldn't even have me even if I wanted to. So that was a joke.
Yeah.
And I am completely independent. I do. Over the years, we've been losing. All our investigators are going by the wayside. There's a real high mortality rate in mutology, if you were. A lot of people end up with strange ends to their lives, unfortunately. And a number of them have been good friends. So it's really important to keep your perspective. This is a very difficult subject. One of the reasons why it doesn't get the attention, it doesn't get the notoriety, it doesn't get the cachet that ghosts and UFOs and Bigfoot and these other things do, is because it's horrific. People don't want to think about, 1,000 pounds of dead, rotting flesh. It's just not sexy. It's not fun. It's not titillating. If anything, it's just downright scary. So I do have a bit of a steely constitution, I guess would be the word. I don't know. It doesn't bother me anymore. And as a result of, my first case was in 92, so do the math. It's been 30 years. As a result of all these cases, I've become more circumspect, a lot more skeptical. And I've had to keep my mouth closed about uninformed people getting involved and making all these wild claims and coming up with theories and pronouncements. And they don't really know what they're talking about as far as I'm concerned. I think it's important to let forensic science tell us what's going on and to have a real good, solid research library. And I'm the only one, along with David Perkins, that can say that, unfortunately. So
as far as these,
we're gatekeepers.
These strange ends, do you think that might be a result of getting a little bit too close to the truth?
No. It's just not being able to handle the psychic strain and the damage that being around people that are absolutely just shattered and being around animals that died a horrific death. I don't know how coroners and vets and veterinary pathologists do it. I really don't. There's a certain armor that you have to have that's not visible to protect yourself from just dozens and dozens and dozens of cases. It really wears on you after a while. And if you've been doing it for 20 years, it can bite you. It can sneak up and bite you.
Mm-hmm. What are the characteristics of a typical cattle mutilation? We've been hearing a lot about the tongue of late, but I know rectal cavities. In many of these cases, though, it doesn't appear like they're after the meat and that there is no blood.
That's not always true, but yeah. Basically, it's the fastest regrowing tissues in the body, the youngest tissues in the body, which are the soft tissue areas, the genitalia, the reproductive tract, the tongue, an eye, occasionally an ear. They'll occasionally take a triangle, a circular or a square piece of hide. Sometimes they'll take the hoof material for no reason. So there's no rhyme or reason except for the softest regenerating and quickest regenerating tissues in the body tend to be, the items that are taken. And there's no real, you're not going to eat. Aliens are coming here to make lip and eye stew or anal souffle or something. It just doesn't make sense. So it's soft tissue organs. They're the fastest regenerating tissues in the body. They harbor the most recent evidence of pollution and contaminants from the environment. The tongue, the anus, the udder, the milk. This is where you find if there's radiation in the environment or any type of pollutants. I would check and see if there's been any big chemical fires. That would be one of the things that I would do if I was investigating these cases. I check and look to see if it was downwind from any large chemical fires. I find the proximity of the horrific dairy farm event that happened a month ago, the time proximity is a little interesting. Almost like somebody maybe covering their tracks. I don't know.
How close was that?
Pretty close. I'd have to do a comparison, but I'm just kind of riffing. I'm thinking about it as I go here. I do tend to be a creative thinker. I look for unobvious connection points between events. Strange weather, aberrant social behavior, Bigfoot reports, UFO sightings. These things tend to happen at the beginning and at the end of waves of cattle mutilations. Also, I call them cheap fireworks. They're these look like giant bottle rockets fizzling out in the air. We have them in the Rocky Mountains. I don't know if you guys have them there, but those are generally a harbinger of some interesting times approaching. And then we see them again once the wave, if you will, or the wave period is over. So it's important to write everything down. Obviously, if you're getting involved in investigating these things, it's important to make copious notes. It's important to think creatively, as I just said, and it's important to network with other like minds and people that have been at it a lot longer than you. So, I mean, I'm willing to help anybody out that wants to get involved. But I'm just hoping that New York all of a sudden doesn't have mutilation cases in my neighborhood,
right?
Because I would be duty bound to go and deal with them. Fortunately, we don't have a lot of beef cattle in this, in upstate New York. It's mostly dairy, but still, this is not a fun topic. I'll be the first one to admit. I don't talk about this stuff at cocktail parties and backyard barbecues,
right?
Especially when people are eating beef. not a popular party topic.
Not at all. Especially when you're asking if someone likes them. There's blood rare.
Yeah, well, I do actually. I love beef, but I only eat local beef. Only it's grain-fed and no antibiotics, no added chemicals or fillers or any of that stuff. And I like to have it local and no
GMOs.
No GMOs, and I don't eat that much either. I might have it once a month, maybe. So,
okay. As far as the blood, something that was done with surgical precision, even if you do use a very, very sharp object, wouldn't that typically leave a fair amount of blood?
Yeah. And so what they probably do is they allow the animal to drain itself by exsanguating the blood from the neck. There's quite a number of cases that we've had where we found needle marks. But if the animal's already dead, blood pressure subsides fairly quickly. So if there's no blood pressure, you're not going to have bleeding. So sometimes the lack of blood can be just due to the fact the animal was dead when they did the actual cutting on it. They do take the blood. I have had cases that have been completely and thoroughly exsanguated of blood. And you can tell because you cut into the meat and it's gray or maybe a slight pinkish color, not red. And that's how you know an animal has been drained. And that's by far the exception, not the norm.
Okay, what about blood-sucking creatures or satanic cults who might be after these animals for their blood?
I think that's a very interesting question, and I think if there's some sort of paranormal entity, a predator out there that's doing this, and has been doing it for possibly thousands of years, that would be one indication of that. When you have cases back before, governments with technology and stuff back in the 1600s or the 1800s, let's say, or the late 1700s, those cases were done by something that is still operating today. But on top of that, then we have all these what appear to be human perpetrated cases. It's almost like the humans are trying to figure out what it is that the non-humans are looking for. And either that or they've identified what they're looking for and they begin looking for it too. It's almost like a game of cat and mouse going on. I've had cases where they try to mimic the style of one group to throw the investigators off to think that one group is now operating in this particular area or this around this location. So I think there's multiple groups with multiple agendas ultimately at work and dare I say play.
Mm-hmm. So something with an intelligence, but something also with an agenda, which could explain why they don't take the meat. We'll continue our conversation with Christopher O'Brien, author of Stalking the Herd, Unraveling the UFO or the Cattle Mutilation Mystery. And, of course, he's also with the UFO Data Acquisition Project, which is putting up surveillance. I wonder if we can capture any of this on camera. We'll have more with Christopher O'Brien when we continue across the USA right after this.
Into the paranormal.
Across the USA, somewhere between abnormal and paranormal, I'm Jeremy Scott. Tuesday turning into Wednesday. It's so good to have you with us. If you have a take on cattle mutilations, 503-506-0396 in North America or up in Canada. That's 503-506-0396, and internationally or anywhere, actually, at ITP51 on Skype. If you miss any of that, it's up at parabnormalradio.com. Would love to hear from you. We are live, and we're talking with Christopher O'Brien, author of Stalking the Herd, Unraveling the Cattle Mutilation Mystery. His websites are strangeplanet.com, and the UFO Data Acquisition Project is at ufodap.com. We've been talking about blood. It is a very, very integral and important part of this whole phenomenon. And so when we talk about where is the blood, and I was talking about, bloodsuckers and satanic cults perhaps being involved earlier. I'm wondering if cow blood is different than human blood, because then that would explain if these are humans who are doing this, why they might be after cattle blood.
Well, wait a minute. Cow blood is a virtual genetic match to human blood. No other animal has blood that's closely associated with human blood as cattle blood. There's a bit of it's kind of an old wives' tale, or a sort of a myth that I think O negative can survive, or what is it? I think it's O negative is universal donor, right? That if you're a universal donor, you can survive a direct transmission of cattle hemoglobin. You can't, but you're about as close as you can get in the animal kingdom. So, there's a 99.9 to 9 places, 999999999 match to human hemoglobin with cattle hemoglobin. Pigs are second, out to 7 places. So we all remember the old adage, you are what you eat. Well, that's, in this case, it's pretty accurate. We've been eating cows and pigs so long that we've begun to morph into their hemoglobin makeup. So I think that whatever is doing this, at the core, the high strange element, the one out of, 25 cases, let's say, that this has been around for a long time, that it's a earthbound closed system paranormal entity, predator, and it's probably responsible for our ancient practice of animal sacrifice. Maybe if we sacrifice the animals that aren't so desirable, that we don't want, like we don't need as much as the seed bulls and the really good breeding stock, maybe if we sacrifice these animals, that will placate whoever it is. If there's any connection to, the occult, I think that there's your connection point right there. I don't think these are occultists going out and doing satanic rituals in Texas pastures. There's way too many firearms in Texas to think you can get away with that. I think there's something else going on.
Okay, well, maybe it's not Satanists. Maybe they're just vegans.
I don't think they'd be out killing cows. But
they leave the meat.
No, I'll think that one out.
I mean, I'm thinking, why not haul away the meat? And number one, you would have to sit there an awfully long time to get it free, and it's heavy to haul.
Yeah. And don't be mistaken. There's lots of cases occurring all the time of people going out butchering a cow for meat. It happens. It doesn't happen very often. People aren't that brazen and courageous enough to do that. And, ranchers and farmers are notoriously well armed, and a lot of them are ex-military. So you're taking your life in your hands, even being on their property.
Absolutely.
And as far as the blood being drained, this is a misnomer. I don't know how many cases. The rancher says, they drained my Bessie. They drained her. Look down. You can see there's no blood. And I just get the rancher to help me, and we take that stiff old thing, and we grab it by the legs, and we whip it over, turn it over, and whoosh. All the constituent elements come right out of all the wounds.
Gushes. We'll continue into the next hour, our final segment with Christopher O'Brien coming up on Into the Parabnormal. I'm Jeremy Scott.
If you think this hour was mind-blowing, just wait until you hear what's next. Into the Parabnormal. We'll be right back.
There's a parallel universe, a veil that separates us from all we perceive. True reality. Open the gate, let the truth be known. It's more than meets the eye. We're not alone. Into the paranormal. Into the paranormal. Into the paranormal. Crossover.
Expanding your consciousness as much as you'll let us. This is Into the Parabnormal.
We're at 7 of these cattle mutilations now in Texas. Had the first one in Madison County, 5 additional in 2 additional Texas counties. And then we heard about a 7th that was revealed yesterday. And I'm interested in Christopher O'Brien's thoughts on the finding. One of those they're saying was pneumonia. Now, of course, I guess that could be the case. But maybe this cow that was mutilated just happened to have pneumonia, and it still was mutilated.
Yeah. Oftentimes the finding of pneumonia or blackleg, poison plants, those are common killers of cattle. And we're coming out of the winter. It's been a tough winter. The livestock has been, I think, a little extra stressed this winter. So it's not out of the realm of reason that the animal did die of pneumonia, and then was conveniently predated on or scavenged by intelligent scavengers. Oftentimes, I think these animals are killed, and then they allow blood pressure to subside, and then they come in and do their handiwork. That's why you don't have bleeding wounds oftentimes. So there's no real rhyme or reason. Each case is a unique island unto itself, and it's the commonalities tying them together that we need to really focus on.
All right. Are there other commonalities that we haven't touched on?
Yeah. The organs that are taken. Oftentimes the type of cattle. For instance, if you go to India, cattle are revered. I mean, they are worshipped. If a cow wants to go in your house, an average Indian would be beside himself with joy. It would be an historic moment for his family, because that is such a good luck charm to have a cow want to walk through your house. They have nurseries for cattle. They wet nurse cattle with human wet nurses. They have nursing homes for cattle. And the cattle that they worship are Brahmas, which are the sacred white cattle of India. They're one of the most ancient, pure breeds of cattle. And there are millions and millions and millions of Brahmas all over the world, because the Indians don't eat them. They sell them. So India is the largest exporter of cattle. And so you think with all the Brahmas around the world and all these mutilations that we've had over the years and all the different cattle types that you would have a Brahma mute, right? No, not one. Not one single case that I know of has ever been filed of a Brahma cow, bull, or steer or calf that's been mutilated. Now, what's up with that? How do you explain that away? I find that a very, very, very intriguing fact. You also been saying all around the world, well, we don't get cattle mutilation cases in countries that aren't Christian. This is a Christian country mystery. You're not going to find cattle mutilations in China, India, parts of Europe and Asia where Christianity isn't the predominant religion. I don't know why this is, but it seems like only Christian countries get hit. I find that very, very intriguing.
What do you make of the cases over in Australia? There were some famous cases.
There were,
over there.
There have been many hundreds of cases.
A decade ago or something?
No, there were cases just last year. Mike Williams Ranch, he had a cattle station out there, and I think he lost almost a dozen cows out there. Of course, it's a little different out in Australia because the distances out there are so vast. You have single cattle ranches that are bigger than some states. I think there's a ranch that's as big as the state of Pennsylvania or something, or a large back east state. So, what does that mean, Chris? It means that you don't find the animal until it's too late to be able to do anything. I have to be on site, or a veterinary pathologist, or a vet who's going to do a necropsy has to be on site before the animal starts to rot. And this is the perfect time of year for that, because at night it's cold and the animal will stay pristine. And if you cover it with a white tarp or a silver tarp during the day and kind of tent pole it a little bit, it'll help keep it pristine. So during this time of year and in the late fall, you have the best conditions in nature for the case to remain pristine enough for a forensic professional to come in and then do a workup on the animal. In Australia, they don't even find them for a week sometimes, because they can't cover. They cover the herds with the helicopters out there. The land is so vast. So that's another important thing to realize is we have to get on site within 24 hours during the summer. If it's down south, where you guys where these cases are, it's the window, the time window is even shorter. It gets real hot down there real quick in the morning.
It'll spoil the weather.
And so that's another thing. Conditions is important. The fact that we do have mutilation cases in April is noteworthy. This is not normally they'll start around the end of April, beginning of May. So we're a little early this year, which is an indication to me that there's other cases going on. So.
Okay, do you have an idea on the numbers? I had heard, 10,000, 14,000, and I don't know within time frame. I know there was a rash of cases in the 70s, I think, in Nebraska. And
there's been 3,000 cases in South America in the last 20 years.
3,000 in South America?
Yeah, mostly Argentina and Brazil.
What about here in the United States?
There's been lots of cases. They don't get reported. I might find out about them. David Perkins.
So do you agree with the number about 14,000 or more?
It's really hard to put a number on it. I'd say definitely 10,000, if not more. I think 14,000, 15,000 wouldn't be out of the realm of reason. And it may be way higher, because I'm absolutely positive that many of these cases are not getting reported. And if you're not reporting cases, they don't become part of the statistics.
Yeah. All right. You mentioned earlier that ET is the least likely source of this, so that means that these things were not taken aboard a spacecraft spaceship and dropped off, or at least not one steered by extraterrestrials. So what else does that leave, and what can we rule out?
Well, like I said, I think there is some sort of supernatural predator that has existed alongside humankind for thousands of years. I think that's what's at the core of this. That do the high strange cases. I had a vet call me and say, "Get out here! You're not going to believe this." I go out there, and he had a cow that the rear end of the cow had been cauterized shut and had a pregnant baby cow, a calf inside it. I got a report of another veterinarian who claimed his unborn calf in the womb had been mutilated as well as the mother. Now, how do you explain that? That's physically impossible. We had a case where an animal was fine with intact, but with no spinal column. How do you do that? I had a case where a brain was taken out with no break in the cranium, and the dura, that thin film, that paper that surrounds the brain, between the brain and the brain, on the brain case, the skull, the dura was perfectly intact. Now, how do you take a brain? Just taking a small piece of the brain would have torn the dura. Now, how do you get the whole thing out without tearing the dura and go through and get the brain with no break in the skull? So I've had some cases. Maybe
you repair it afterwards, and if you're a supernatural predator, maybe you have the ability to do that. I don't know.
No. A 5-inch pristine fresh snowfall, not one track, not one drop of blood.
Amazing. So you mentioned an agenda. Any idea what that might be?
Yeah, I think the beef industry is deathly afraid of mad cow disease. And I think that's, nobody wants to talk about that. The only person that really has it was Ted Oliphant, who was a police officer down in Fife, Alabama. He and I worked real closely together when he was having to deal with a lot of cases in the early to mid-'90s. One thing that we both kicked around was the idea of possibly some sort of pathogen being prepared to unleash on humanity. And then I thought, wait a minute, we've already got one. At that particular point in time, the mad cow wave in England was at its height. And then as soon as they got rid of all the mad cows, or they thought they did, then hoof and mouth disease broke out. And so they destroyed every cow in the English Isles in Great Britain. 4.7, I think, million cattle were destroyed. And then what they didn't know at the time was what caused mad cow disease. They didn't know about prions.
So
the smallest life form.
What are you specifically saying here, that these cattle mutilations are done because they might have mad cow disease, and it's a coordinated effort to take out those cattle?
Herders. Exactly.
Who might spread it?
Colm Kelleher, he's the only person I know of that has been the head of 3 different government programs studying UFOs. He was also the managing director of NIDS, the National Institute for Discovery Sciences, Robert Bigelow's group in the 90s. He was also the chief of Bigelow Aerospace, and now is the head of the Bigelow Consciousness Institute, whatever the name of that is. He wrote a book that was ignored, just tragically ignored, called Brain Trust. And it's a look at the link between mad cow disease and Alzheimer's, and the link between the outbreak of prion disease and the outbreak of cattle mutilations. And this is all done, by a board-certified microbiologist, a guy who's really got his science ball, his science act together. And like I said, he helped head our 3 programs that we've had since 2008, I think, that the government's been funding. So he's somebody that I think should be acknowledged for the really good quality work that he's done. And his book is Brain Trust. It costs $380 something to find a copy online because it only had one printing, and nobody's letting go of their copies, including me.
All right. How do we contact you? Folks are interested in racking your brain over cattle mutilations.
Well, TMV guy at Gmail is my primary My primary email address, again, it's T as in Tom, M as in Mary, V as in Victor, Guy, G-Y, one word, lowercase. And Our Strange Planet is currently under reconstruction. I'm getting a facelift for my site. But I also have the UFO Data Acquisition Project, which is selling software packages and gear for people that want to set up UFO monitoring operations with magnetometers, recording gravitometers, radio frequency spectrum analyzers. Got quite a number of different types of gear that you can monitor real time, 24/7. If you live in an area that has a chance of some good activity. If you put up 3 to 6 cameras, they'll all coordinate. They're all synchronized, and we can get you going for as little as $350, and then the full blown systems are around $4,000.
Christopher, appreciate you so much coming on and talking with us about this.
Sure. Yeah, keep me posted.
Always good to talk. And I'll let the audience know that because, we do have new listeners, when we talked to Christopher last in June of 2017, we've grown by leaps and bounds since that time. It was really a great conversation that we had. And, of course, we have classics now on the weekend where we get to go back and relive some of these oldies but goodies. And so this weekend, you'll hear Christopher O'Brien and myself from 2017 talking about this as well. So you'll find that wherever you get this program on podcast and on stream. Best to you, Christopher.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Appreciate it as well. We'll have more of our program right after this.
Into the Paranormal.
I love being on the air across the USA, and especially in times like these, even on breaking news evenings. Oh, you haven't heard? Yes, there has been another cattle mutilation. Not in Texas. This information just filtering through, and I have Chuck Zukowski with me now to discuss it and also his research. He's been researching and investigating UFO and paranormal phenomenon in the field for about 35 years. Perhaps you've heard about him. In 2016, author Ben Mesrich released his book, The 37th Parallel, The Secret Truth Behind America's UFO Highway, which was written about Chuck and his life involved with the paranormal phenomena from animal mutilations to the 1947 Roswell event. In 2019, Chuck hosted the TV show on Travel Channel called Alien Highway, traveling across the Midwest investigating the paranormal. His website where he blogs about these phenomena is ufonut.com. Chuck, it's so good to have you here.
Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Man, I've just been running around all day. I'm working at
You've been herding cattle?
Pretty much. I'm trying to do my day job by working remote at home to be able to, field calls and talk to other investigators and other people that are interested and concerned about this animal mutilation thing. Now, you're right. As we speak, right about 10 minutes before, I clicked on for this show, I hung up with an investigator in Oregon, and there's a mutilation case occurring there right now, and they're headed there. So
Oregon or Oklahoma?
I'm sorry. Did I say Oregon? I'm sorry. I got Oregon on my mind too because
me too. Me too.
I talked to the rancher today, the Oregon rancher today, because they're real concerned about this. Oklahoma, I'm sorry. So it appears to be about a 1.5-year-old cow. So far, from what we know, that the tongue was removed, the lower part of the jaw has been removed. Some other things, rectal area has been cored out. So stuff that's very, very similar to what we've seen in Texas, and we've also seen in Oregon. And so basically, I was kind of spent the last 45 minutes briefing the investigator going out there, because really, there's not a lot of people out here that really have the experience to do animal mutilation investigations. This will be the first time this particular person is going out there to look at an animal. And so I'm just kind of prepping the person and telling them how, what to do, what not to do, how to be careful, what to look for, and what to record, and and you always want to make sure that it's safe, not only for the investigator and their team, but also the rancher too. So I always hit the area with a Geiger counter to make sure there's no radiation. I've never picked up radiation, but I have picked up high levels of electromagnetic field. So I told them that we need to hit it with you need to hit it with an EMF meter, and then kind of explain how to do that properly, where you have to go outside, away from the animal, take a reading, then go near the animal. Now, animals, it's interesting, even a dead animal, this was probably within about a 24-hour period, so it's a good case. You will get EMF readings. You'll get anywhere from 8 to 10, maybe even 15 microtesla's off of an animal that's dead, only because it's starting to decompose. Now, humans, and we're all mammals, right? So, we're actual living, speaking, talking, whatever circuits. And on a rest right now, just you and I just talking back and forth, we're emitting about 100 watts of power, just like a 100-watt light bulb.
All right, hold that thought. We'll pick that up exactly where we left when we return. Chuck Zukowski joining me now on Into the Parabnormal. More coming up.
Parabnormal news. A sonic boom from a possible meteor rattled central Indiana last Friday night. Residents outside of Indianapolis reported their houses shook as the sky lit up with a streak of blue light. Witnesses say there was a huge flash of light that was recorded by a lightning detection system. Pilots in Kentucky reported seeing a meteor. WTHR talked with Dr. Brian Murphy, professor of physics at Butler University's Holcomb Observatory and Planetarium, who analyzed the video.
From the looks of the video I heard and the fact that people thought they heard a sonic boom, this sounds like it was a fireball, which is a relatively large object. That is maybe rock, sort of large rock coming into the atmosphere.
The Department of Emergency Management in Hamilton County, Indiana, says several reports came in across the county, but there were no reports of damage. The Lyrid meteor shower is currently peaking and is set to last until this weekend. George Henry, Paranormal News.
Someone, something, is mutilating cattle.
They were all lying on one side with their tongues removed. A straight, clean cut with apparent precision.
3 different counties, 6 cows have been found dead, with each seeming more grisly than the next.
The truth is far more abnormal than we want to believe. You're headed somewhere between abnormal and paranormal. Into the Parabnormal.
So there were the 6 cattle, the first in Texas, and then an additional 5. That brought us to 6. And then Monday we found out that there was a 7th. Now we're hearing from Chuck Zukowski tonight from Alien Highway and from UFOnut.com, focus of the 37th Parallel, The Secret Truth Behind America's UFO Highway, written by Ben Mesrich. We were hearing about this case in Oklahoma, excuse me. So that brought us to talk about how to approach this when you're on the ground. And you were speaking about EMF readings. Please continue, Chuck.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but I was just fired up because it's been one of those days. I pretty much finished a case and still been talking to the rancher of the Oregon mutilation case. And then I was able to actually talk to the deputy, the investigator for the Texas, Madison County mute cases and was trading notes with her, going back and forth. And like I normally do, I mean, they've never really come across anything like this before. So a lot of these law enforcement investigators, they don't know what to expect. Now, I was a reserve deputy for 8 years after I've already been a UFO investigator. So I already knew what to expect. And now I know from being a reserve deputy or being a deputy that I know how they feel and how, they would do things coming into an investigation like this. There's certain things, obviously, they don't do, and that's bringing a Geiger counter to see if there's radiation, or bring an EMF meter to see if there's any high levels of electromagnetic field, which I've actually measured in the past on a few of my cases. There's other things too, like fluorescent lights. You may want to bring looking for fluorescence and some other things. But it's for these deputies going out there. I know from being a deputy that a lot of the county sheriff's departments will probably train one or two of their deputies on how to do animal cruelty cases. That's when an animal's been killed on a rancher's property or whatever, and they go out there. And of course, the first thing they look for is evidence of who did it. And what really baffles the deputies is there's absolutely no evidence of how these cows have been killed. They're just laying there. The animal is laying there as if it was placed on the ground. And there's no struggle at all. So when you look at the hoofs and the legs and the neck and the head and the ground and the soil, you won't see any struggling. There's no signs of struggling. When they walk around the animal and walk around the exterior area of the animal, doing a spiral going outwards, they can't find any signs of human intervention or predator. Now, there will be some scavengers, and that does happen. But, when you have a 1,000-pound animal that's laying there dead, you're looking for bear tracks, mountain lion tracks, something like that. Coyotes will come in later on, but generally, they don't mess with the carcass for at least 24 hours or so, and that kind of keeps them away too. It's really, really interesting stuff.
And I'm hearing that in some of these cases, the scavengers don't even want the carcass, which is odd.
There are cases. Eventually, the scavengers will go, and I have a theory why, and it has to do with EMF, because I've had biological samples I've taken to a veterinary lab, and there's really nothing out of the ordinary of the sample itself, except the fact that we learned that there's no hemorrhaging, meaning the animal wasn't alive when it was cut up. So there's one good thing, about that is the animal was killed first, then it was cut up, or else it'd be showing signs of hemorrhaging around the cuts. So and the heart in some cases was collapsed, meaning it was bled out. So the animal, basically how the mutilation case works is the animal's taken from location A to a location B, which we don't know where location B is. We haven't found it yet. And it's bled out there and cut up, and then it's brought to location C, which is the general area where it was originally in location A. It could be within 50 yards. It could be, within 50 feet. But who's ever doing it, they take the animal, get what they want from the animal, and then they bring it back. But the interesting thing is the energy that was involved with taking the animal and bringing it back. That's what we're picking up on EMF meters. Like there's some type of electromagnetic force associated with the removal and the return of the animal. Not only on the animal itself, not all the time. Sometimes it's dissipated by the time an investigator gets there, but sometimes you actually pick it up in the soil too. And it depends on the soil content, if there's a lot of clay or not, which would can hold that EM field in there for a little bit, and then eventually it dissipates off. So over the years, and gosh, I was kind of looking at some of my blogs, over the past years I've done on mutilation cases. I've counted close to 55. So I've been doing this for couple of decades now, and every time I do a new case, I learn something new. So it's really interesting. Oh, and then something else too. The deputies won't ask. It's specific questions that a UFO investigator can ask that deputies won't ask because they don't think about it. In the case of the organ mutilation, and if you go to my website ufonut.com, you'll see the organ mutilation there. And I interviewed the rancher, and a week or so before the mutilation case, the rancher did see flashes of light off at a distance. Now, I looked to see where that ranch house was, and it's out in the middle of nowhere. There's nobody around it. He's in a very desolate area. Don't know yet too much about the Texas one. They don't have a case report released yet when I was talking to the deputy because there's so much going on there that she's trying to get it all together. It's just too much. It's going to take a little bit of time. So we really don't know, the exact.
So this is really fresh stuff.
Well, for the 6 or now 7 in Texas, it's pretty much overwhelmed, that part of the sheriff's department trying to figure this out. Not only that, but when they put it on their Facebook, it went international, and Fox News and NBC and everybody else picked it up. So the poor deputy is being inundated, by reporters and people that are curious about it. Now, I talked with the investigator tonight about this particular one that's in Oklahoma, and the first thing I said is, look, as soon as we get more information of this, we've got to go public on it. And when I went public with the Oregon case, I didn't use the deputy's name. I didn't use the rancher's name. And that's okay. We don't want looky-loos there. We don't want the ranchers, or the deputy being inundated by a lot of people like this particular one in Texas is being inundated right now, because then they can't do their job because they're always on the phone, But we just
or chasing people off the property.
Well, yes, that too. Obviously, you don't want to release the location of mutilation because you'll get it. You'll just get, and it's so. I don't feel, I don't feel bad that people want to go see, because I would, but you have to respect the rancher, and they have to go on and still do what they need to do every day, and they don't need people hopping the fences, and they will. People will. They'll hop a fence and they'll trespass to see what they can see. That's just human curiosity. So we try to keep that, away from the public for a little while. But the main thing is to get the information, like in programs like this, to get the information out. So other ranchers and other, and people will be more aware of this. Mm-hmm. And like I said, when we had March 30th, pretty much started this thing with the organ mutilation. And then it looks like April 9th was probably the April 8th, I think it was, maybe. Yeah. That the April 8th was the first case in Texas. So that's about 9 days after the 30th. And then that's been about 9 days or so, or since the last one. I got to find out about the 7th, exactly when they found the 7th. And now you have this Oklahoma
Well, they
case.
said Monday, so that would have been yesterday that they released that one. So that would have been the 24th.
Yeah, but we don't know exactly. You see, the information coming from Texas, when they said 6 animals had died, it was over a span of a couple weeks. And all I know is the very first one was found dead on April 8th. So that's the other part that, as investigators, we have to look at, is find out exactly, for all 7 of the animals, what day.
Okay, so are the dates important then? Are we looking at patterns or something?
That's what we're looking for. We're looking for patterns. Because the dates are important, but the problem is with some of these cases now, this one in Oklahoma right now, we know it's been within 24 hours the animal was seen yesterday. So we know that they're going out there within a 24-hour period, which now we can peg it down to, April 24th for this particular case. But when we learn more about the Texas cases, then we want to know, okay, because a lot of these animals are free grazing animals, and the rancher may not know where they are every day. They may come across it 2 days later after it's been dead, or even 3 or 4 days later after. So we can, once we know an estimated date on when the animal was found and estimated about, when it was last seen, we can start looking for patterns. And, with the Oklahoma one, we found out about it. I'm sorry. I got 3 of them here I'm working on. The Oregon one, we found out a good week or so after, it actually was found. So there was a lot of footwork on the Oregon one. I knew there was a case in Oregon. I didn't know where. So I had to put my my detective boots on, and I started researching in Oregon the counties that had mutilations in the past. Then I started calling their dispatch, the sheriff's departments, and talking to dispatch and talking to different people there and asking if anybody had released a case report on an animal cruelty, not a mutilation, not a strange animal death. They mostly list them as animal cruelties. And so by the third county that I talked to, and they were researching for me, that's where I found out it was Harney County.
Interesting.
So really interesting. And from there, I was able to get the case report, and then once I got the case report, then I realized that there were pictures associated with it. Then I had to get the pictures associated with it. So it takes a little bit of work to be able to do this. It's a little bit of a detective work to get to this. Now with the Texas case, right off, I had an idea because it was on their Facebook, so I knew what county it was, and I was able to get a hold of the deputy just by sheer luck. I was able to call and talk to the deputy directly because I was able to acquire the deputy's phone extension, and we had a good half-hour to 45-minute talk. And she went on my website and she saw the pictures of the case in Oregon, and said that it was very similar to what they were seeing in Texas. So this would make sense because we were supposed to touch base today about trying to get some of this information to go public. But since she hasn't been able to release a case report yet, I've got a special request into the sheriff in Madison County to see if they can give me the information.
Hold that thought. Sometimes it takes more than boots on the ground to get this information. And we'll have more with Chuck Zukowski right after this.
Into the Paranormal.
I get it. They don't know what they're dealing with, and therefore sometimes it can take a while to get a sense of what it is that you're dealing with and how best to describe that or to write it up in a report. Talking with a former sheriff's deputy and investigator of the UFO and paranormal phenomena, Chuck Zukowski, his website, ufonut.com. So please continue, Chuck. I mean, these cases in Texas, you had one and then you had 5 more and now a 7th. And when you don't know exactly what it is you're dealing with, I can see how that can be easily overwhelming.
Well, it is. The first thing is as an investigator, when you walk up to an animal, you kind of just assume it's a animal mutilation phenomenon. You have to, assume that maybe the animal had died of natural causes or was poisoned or is viral. So you have to be really careful when you come up to the animal. You got to know a lot about what you're doing and looking at the animal to make sure that it wasn't some type of virus that took the animal down, because you don't want to take that virus home to your family. And so once you've done enough of these and you come up on one, and you can peg it right off as being, part of that paranormal type of mutilation. What's interesting that I'm looking at the map now, and I'm looking at Oregon, and so we're traveling from Oregon, we're going east into Texas, and then now we're coming up to into Oklahoma, and I'm guessing the pattern here and what I've seen in the past, You may see Kansas or Missouri might get hit next if it's following, or Illinois, because it's kind of following that pattern where there's been other mutilations in the past. I'm just kind of throwing it out there. Just
okay,
in case.
So is there a rhyme or reason to this?
No, I wish there was. With the 37th parallel, there was a rhyme or reason to that, because basically it's a paranormal highway that cuts across the U.S. and there's been a lot of UFO activity. Matter of fact, this could fall into the 37th parallel, meaning that the center is kind of treated like a turnpike, and where you can hit water sources. I think there's I think hydrogen is involved in this. Every one of the mutilation cases that I've worked with, even the one in Texas, I was looking at that in that area. There's water sources nearby, so hydrogen may be the key. If you go into 37th degree latitude, you can hit all the major aquifers in the United States, underground. There's all kinds of stuff you can hit water. So that'd be like a great turnpike. And then you would exit up and you'd exit down and do what you need to do. And it's usually when you exit north or you exit south. And it would fall right into north to Portland and then south into Texas and then down into Oklahoma. I'm not saying that's the case. I'm just saying that a lot of these sightings, the UFO sightings, have a tendency of traveling east to west, and then they, or if they're going north to south and they blitz off, they'll go blitz off to the left or right, meaning east to west. Just a theory, but I'm still kind of putting it together, and I've got some other ideas about it.
Yeah, so let's get to some of those ideas and theories in the remaining time that we have here. What do you think is behind this?
I got to tell you, one of the things the deputies don't ask is, because they don't know, is there anything unusual that the rancher has seen in the past couple of weeks? Turns out the one in Oregon had seen flashes of light. And they're out in the middle of nowhere, so there's nobody around them, and the flashes of light were fairly close. The deputy that he talked to never asked that question. We never knew that. The other thing, too, was I learned that the rancher and his wife, the one in Oregon, were ill a little bit after they got too close to the animal. They were about 4 feet away from the animal. And then for the next couple of days, they were feeling a little bit ill. Now, it could be, one of the reasons could be maybe there was a high EM field there. Got to remember, electromagnetic fields is they're high frequency radiation. So it's radiation, and it can affect the human body, like I said, because we're circuits too. So some of the things you have to ask. A lot of things in Oregon mimic what we see or at least what we've seen through the publications about Texas. And then I've got a couple of pictures that the investigators sent me on the phone on Oklahoma, and there's a couple of similarities too. I'm just hoping the Oklahoma one isn't, a hoax. And it wouldn't be a hoax from the rancher. It could be just, a copycat type of person out there. So we have to be careful about that too, just in case.
Absolutely, Chuck. Time was too short, but I have a feeling this will not be the last case that you investigate, and so I look forward to being able to have you back.
Yeah, I hope it is the last case, because
you hope it is. Wishful thinking.
Yeah,
UFOnut.com, your website, and social media as well. Thanks so much, Chuck. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Yeah. And we'll keep our pulse on this to see what indeed the future does hold. From the cold, dark depths of a secret dungeon somewhere deep in the remote Pacific Northwest, ranchers, keep those cameras going. We want to capture this on film. Good night.